It's time for Football at 4 with Geoff Mosher.
My personality is I want to win badly. I want to win more Lombardis for Philadelphia and our fans. We got the greatest fans around, and I will do everything possible.
Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios. This is Football at 4.
Sure is. Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. It drops Mondays and Thursdays during the offseason, 6 a.m. Geoff Mosher and Adam Kaplan are your hosts. You hear them right here during Football at 4. Mosher's in the house today. We have a lot of Eagles stuff that we want to get into. We've been talking Eagles for most of the show. A lot of interaction, a lot of engagement. So we'll bring Geoff Mosher into that conversation as he joins us now on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline here on the Sports Bash. And Mosher, what's going on, my man?
Mike, how's it going? Great show today, as always.
Thank you. By the way, congratulations to the debut of Q&A. We had Quentin Michael on yesterday's show, and he was very good. Josh said he heard the debut edition this morning, so I encourage everybody to go out there and take a listen to the Q&A with Quentin Michael and Jason Avant. But I want to get your take on, number one, it appears that the first offseason domino is about to happen as Derek Gunn is reporting that the Eagles look like they are trying at least to restructure the contract of Brandon Graham. Now, this is interesting because Graham did an interview with Zach Berman in The Athletic essentially saying, I don't want to go anywhere. Like, do what we got to do. So it appears that he is willing to change the deal that he just signed a couple of years ago and that this will be the first step in trying to get out from under this cap problem.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, Mike, thought that Brandon Graham was just going to get lumped in with all of the guys over 30 who have high cap numbers, as in you're out the door because the team has to scale down. But as Adam and I have talked about on Inside the Birds quite a lot, is that there are going to be some guys who are going to be kept, and Howie Roseman's going to have to probably kick the can down the road a little bit with either restructures or extensions to lower cap numbers. And Brandon Graham would more likely be that kind of guy for a variety of reasons. One, he's still a productive player, Mike. Honestly, Brandon, for his age, probably has given you the same kind of year every year for the last 7 or 8 years. He really has not showed any kind of sign of decline in play. So you go into next year confident that even if his play is not what it is, if he eventually loses a step, that he's not going to fall off the face of the earth. This is not, he's not Jason Peters right now. Even Jason Peters would gradually recede till you got to a point where it became a little bit silly to keep bringing him back, even though he would play, comparatively speaking, at a decent level. But Brandon is your best defensive end right now, your best, pass rusher / run stopper, and they don't really have a whole lot of bodies, God bless you, that are meant for being a starter.
I don't think anybody heard that.
I know. I just wanted to show my respects because I can see you now when we do these interviews. But if you think about it, Josh Sweat and Derek Barnett, Barnett I think will also work out with a new contract, and he'll come back. He's been injured a lot. Josh Sweat is a guy that they've always monitored because of his knee injuries prior to coming to the Eagles. So they don't really have like a whole lot of options to start defensive end. So Brandon's a guy that they should keep around.
All right. What's in it for the player to do the restructure? Why would they acquiesce to the team and say, all right, you want to restructure me? Fine. Like, I signed this deal. It was a deal that we agreed upon, the deal I like, and now you're telling me to restructure. If I'm Brandon Graham or Fletcher Cox or Brandon Brooks or Lane Johnson, someone they might approach, why, if I'm them, do I agree to do this?
Well, in a lot of cases, and we'll have to see what eventually becomes of Brandon's contract. In a lot of cases, Mike, the restructure is not going to give you any more or less money than you were already going to make. It just changes the bookkeeping, right? So if, let's say, and I don't have Brandon's contract in front of me. I don't know.
He was set to count 17.9 against the cap this season. This is according to Philly Voice.
Sure.
The final year of his deal. And this says that the move, according to overthecap.com, will save the Eagles just under $9 million.
What move? The move that are they saying the move has been made already? Or
I don't know where they're getting the fact that, but they're saying that move, restructuring his deal, will save them just under $9 million. Now, it says they could have saved $13 million against the cap by designating him as a post-June 1 cut, but only $716,000 if they make the June before June 1st. So obviously they don't want to cut the guy. They want him to be here. So does Graham get paid the same amount of money? Like, does this check come in every 2 weeks and it's the same money? It's just they take that money and say, realistically, we're paying you in 2024. How does that all work?
So, I mean, without getting into all the minor the details and everything like that, your cap number isn't just your salary. It's your salary that year combined with the amount of roster bonus that you had signed at a different time that is spread out over 2, 3, 4, or 5 years. That's a combination. So if your base salary, let's say your base salary is $10 million, and they take $5 million of that, right, and they reinvest it as a signing bonus and spread it out $1 million for 5 years, you're still that's still money that they're giving you up front. Here's your $5 million, right? But as a bookkeeping purposes, it's now spread out over 5 years. And the team knows that you might not be playing for us in 4 or 5 years. But at that point, your cap hit, if we added dummy years, like extra years to it, at that point, it's $1 million against our $190, $200 million cap, whatever it is, that will be dead money, but is such a small percentage that it was worth spreading it out 3 years prior. And so for Brandon Graham, again, what they're talking about is taking his base salary this year, right, and taking some of it, most of it, who knows, we'll see, and turning that into a signing bonus and spreading that out over years to make the cap number lower. So, because as you know, any money over 1 year is going to be a lot different if it's the same money spread out over 3 years or 4 years or 5 years from a bookkeeping standpoint.
Yeah. Now, he had told Zach Berman from The Athletic today, he says, I don't want to go anywhere. I don't know how long, but I know for me, I'm here in Philly. He essentially was saying, if I'm here until the wheels fall off this thing. So he's the kind of guy that you can approach, and he's probably very willing to do this. Is that everybody? If you're saying it's the same money you're getting, it's just a bookkeeping thing, is this something that you can readily do? All right, Brandon Brooks, we need to restructure you. Fletcher Cox, we're going to restructure you. And that they're saying, okay, no problem.
Yeah, and normally they do because at the time of their restructure, they're at a stage of their career where you're just basically telling me I'm making the same money. It's just you guys are spreading it out differently. The risk is on you guys, the organization, because now you're adding money to my cap number down the road that's going to reflect poorly against you if I'm not playing well. But it also does leave them vulnerable per se to being cut earlier, but that doesn't change the guaranteed money that they were going to get. And if you'll notice, I think Fletcher Cox has restructured, I want to say twice since signing his first original big deal. Zach Ertz has restructured. Who else? Lane Johnson I believe, has restructured once or twice. Yeah. Zach Ertz has restructured. All these guys have restructured most of these guys, the guys who make a lot of money, have restructured throughout their career. And the reason why they did it was because they were making the same amount of money. It was just really a bookkeeping thing.
And the problem they're having then with the restructuring is they don't have this is odd because they don't have enough guys that make enough money to restructure the deals to help them out, because a lot of the money that's putting them over the cap is from a guy who's no longer here.
Well, that is a big part of it. They do have guys, though, that they can restructure to continue to save money by spreading it out. Darius Slay is one. Brandon Graham, obviously. Zach Ertz will save them money because he will be gone. I'm trying to think of another high-priced guy. It's a possibility that Brandon Brooks could restructure again.
Well, they're the guys. It's Brooks, it's Fletcher, it's Brandon Graham.
Slay, perhaps.
Yeah, Slay. Lane Johnson. I mean, there's like 5 or 6 of them, but that's what I'm saying. There's not this whole list of guys that you can go boom, 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 boom. Because 30-some million of that over the cap is coming from a guy who's not here anymore, and you can't do anything with that. So that's where they have this big issue. And again, we've touched on this a little bit. The cap went down because of the pandemic. They did not plan for a pandemic to lower the cap. So where do we think they may have been over the cap in a normal year? Maybe 15 to 20 million bucks instead of 40.
Correct. I mean, this is certainly not something that they saw coming a year and a half ago. That is the risk you take when you do this system of adding dummy years to extend those signing bonuses into the future. I say it's a risk, and someone could say, well, who could foresee a pandemic? That's not a real risk. Fine. It doesn't have to be a pandemic. You just never know, right? I mean, there are a lot of teams that are insistent. We've talked with Andrew Brandt on this, and he used to be the president of the Packers, right? And his ownership, and he were insistent that every year they were going to match cash to cap. So you didn't have dead money year after year after year. But some teams like the Eagles and the Saints and other teams have done it and used it to their advantage. So it's not for me to say whether it's right or wrong, but there are risks involved.
There's no question about it. It's definitely a philosophy that the Eagles have used for a long time. This is a organizational philosophy that they have kind of implored. All right. So Brandon Graham looks like he's going to restructure. We would imagine they're going to approach some of these other guys to help to get them underneath the cap here. But is there a guy – I mean, they're already going to release Alshon. They're already going to release Malik, right? And they're going to release Deshaun. Is there anybody else – I guess Ertz would fit this – like that they would just flat out release because they can't find a trade partner and he makes too much money?
No, I can't see them releasing or trading Darius Slay at this point because they just don't have any bodies at corner. I mean, you want to still field a competitive team. We talked about that last time. The Eagles are not tanking by any stretch of the means. So, but that is a guy that they could potentially restructure as well. He has a cap hit of, I think, 11 to 12, maybe even bigger than that.
They gave him that deal last year when he was traded here.
Right, because he restructured or had the extension. See, that's the thing. The Brandon Graham thing technically might just be called an extension because it's hard to restructure a deal that has just 1 year left, right? So it may restructure the cap of this past year, but it's going to have to be an extension when it's all said and done. If we're technically speaking, I'm trying to think of any other guys that would be. Oh, Marquise Goodwin is a guy who I think has got a $6 million cap number. So I think that he and the team can probably agree on him coming back at a much different number. You would expect. So that's another place where they can save. And I've told you this before. Like, it wouldn't surprise me, and I wouldn't say I wouldn't even say it's better than 50%. But I mean, it wouldn't shock me if Brandon Brooks was someone they felt that they could get some value for in a trade and moved. Yeah. I don't expect it, but there's a possibility there.
I would like you and Kaplan to have that conversation. I don't think he agrees with you there.
No, and I think we have talked about it. I've gotten him to say, well, all right, I can theoretically see what you're talking about, but I'm not saying it's definite either because I don't know how many people would actually be willing to give up decent value for him at his age, coming off a second Achilles. So,
and look, I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm saying if I'm the Eagles, ESPN did their one daring move. It wasn't all that daring, but I agreed with them that I'm not putting any money or stuff into the offensive line this year. I'm going to see if those guys come back healthy and play. Because my question is this. I have Brandon Brooks and Lane Johnson. How many more years do I anticipate playing those two guys? Like, am I thinking about getting rid of those two guys in the next 3 years?
I agree with you. I would not sign on the offensive line. I would draft on the offensive line.
Well,
they have
on
a very
point,
good.
Though, they drafted Driscoll last year. They drafted Herbig. They've got Dillard. They've got Mailata. They still have Sayamala. I mean, you've got, like, if your line is back healthy, you've got a pretty good line with the guys that are back healthy. Plus, the guys who played a lot last year are now sliding into depth positions. The problem becomes if you lose 4 guys again, now you have a problem. But if these guys can play, I would anticipate Lane Johnson's 30 and Brooks is 31, or maybe the other way around. Those guys should be able to play till they're 34, 35. I shouldn't be worrying about those guys that they're at the end of the line right now, should I?
I think you treat them differently because both of them had some major injuries. Lane with the ankle that was twice repaired now. And then, of course, we can't forget that he did have the suspensions from the PEDs earlier in his career. I mean, that obviously always leaves you one strike away from something happening. Brandon, I just mentioned all those injuries. And Jason Kelce at his age. I mean, I think you can still draft on this offensive line thinking that you're not exactly 100% sure
Kelce's one,
that you're going to get that you're going to get 3 to 5 years out of all of those guys. But I agree with your point on depth. I think that if Jordan Mailata wins out the left tackle job, the fact that if you're holding on to Dillard, that you've got a first-round pick as your top backup, and one of your other backups is a guy in Nate Herbig who played most of the year, not drafted, by the way. He was an undrafted free agent, but still got a lot of experience, showed he can play both center and guard. They have some other guys who got very limited, like a Sua Opeta they may still want to develop. Say that again? Jack Driscoll, of course, right. So that's why I say the Eagles are going to have a bunch of picks, 6, 7, maybe even more before the draft. It's okay if they don't draft them in the first round. I always think it's a good idea to draft guys like that in the third, fourth,
and fifth. Is like when I was talking to Andrew yesterday, he loves Sewell, and he's like, if he's there, you got to take him. And I get it if he's the best player, but to me, I have enough in-house options, and I have so many other problems that I'm just going to say, you know what, for this year, my offensive line, I can't put as much onus on that. I got to fix other problems because I have enough in-house guys to help make that line respectable this year.
I understand that philosophy, but I think it's flawed, to be fair. I think that if you don't stick to your board, you will kick yourself if Penei Sewell becomes a 7-time All-Pro, whatever, and the guy you took was a good player, but not who helped you more immediately, but was not a 7-time Pro Bowl, whatever. You know what I'm saying? That's the Ravens do this great. The Steelers draft wide receivers every year. Imagine if they said we're good at in-house. No, they just they get Deontay, they get Juju, then they still take Chase Claypool in the second round, and he looks like he's going to be amazing. Like the really good teams don't use the draft to quote unquote fix what seems like a problem. They just build their team around the best players because those guys will help you compensate for problems. Every team's got problems, Mike. It's just those who have enough talent to compensate for
All right, so on this then, Kyle Pitts, the more I watch him, the more I'm enamored by getting this guy in my offense. And one of the reasons I feel like if he was my only guy, like I'm going to draft a tight end and he's the guy, I might have a different philosophy. But the thought of having Goddard as my Gronk and him as my Hernandez helps out Rieger, helps out the rest of my offense. People are looking at Pitts like he's a tight end. I mean, to me, he's just more than that. The more you watch this guy, you're going to be like, I need this guy on my offense. So we got people, texting in. You can't draft a tight end, blah, blah, blah. It's not just him as a tight end. He's more than a tight end. But I think having Goddard is why I like the thought of having him more.
Absolutely. The fact that Goddard can block, Mike, right, means that you can play him in line and still use him as an outlet. It doesn't mean he has to block, but it means you can use that flex spot to either put a slot receiver or an ultimate freak of nature like Kyle Pitts. Yeah. I did a lot of homework this week on Kyle Pitts. I spoke to 3 different personnel sources around the league. I asked them all about how you would use Kyle Pitts. And I even asked Mike, one of them, if it would make sense to just play him as a full-time X receiver like Mike Evans, because he's kind of built like a Mike Evans.
He's got almost the same build as Calvin Johnson.
There you go. So I asked about that, and I got from one guy that you could do that. Now, you would have to teach him a little bit more of that outside wide receiver technique and pad level, but they do think he could play it, but still, regardless, they don't think it's the best position. It's best to use him as a move piece. The thing about Calvin Johnson and Mike Evans is those guys were very accustomed to being able to make big plays down the field 30, 40 yards where the ball is in the air and they can use their size, their body, their instincts, and leverage to get the ball. That's not necessarily Kyle Pitts. He's a guy that is such a matchup nightmare. You can throw the ball to him 40 yards in the air. I'm not saying you can't, but he's more used to over the middle, 10, 15, 20 yards, and then using that explosion and athleticism to get yards after the catch. He's such a matchup nightmare that you wouldn't want to relegate him just to the X or just to the slot. You want to move him all around.
Well, and that's where the question becomes, if you have Goddard and him, how do you elect to defend them both? Like, okay, I have Goddard. I can say, I'm going to put it's funny. We had Quentin Michael on yesterday. I was saying if you were in the league, you'd probably be a linebacker. He'd probably be a linebacker in today's game, right? Right. So I have like a guy like Nate Geary defending Goddard. All right, now I have Pitts out there too. Well, who defends him? A safety, where he's just going to blow through that guy, a corner, another linebacker. So now you're going to the second. One of those guys is getting matched up with a linebacker who inevitably can't cover. So the fact that there's two weapons that are quote-unquote tight ends, I think makes me like it more than if I'm just getting Pitts. If I'm just getting Pitts at number 6 and he's the offense, I don't think there's enough value there, right?
Well, it depends on how he develops. I mean, George Kittle is no doubt the number one option on the 49ers, and he was hurt last year, but 2 years ago he was, and they went to the Super Bowl, even with kind of like decent wide receivers, but they were just able to make it work because he was so
their
versatile.
receivers are like Rieger, where they're not great, but they have a skill set, and they utilize the skill set because of Kittle. They can use them on other ways because of Kittle. Somebody brought up Darren Waller, and I didn't realize. Like, I looked at Waller's numbers and was like, "My God, 1,200 yards, 10. I mean, like, if you got that at number 6, I think you're pretty happy."
Yeah, you would be very happy, and I agree with you that it's even a benefit to have guys like Dallas Goedert, Miles Sanders, other explosive in-space guys, Jalen Reagor around him. He's an offensive weapon, and what we know about the Eagles, Mike, and they'll probably deny this, even though they actually say it and don't realize it. They value offense way more than defense, right? I mean, Jeffrey Lurie has said a couple of times that in order to win a Super Bowl, you have to have a top 5 offense. He has never said anything about having a top 5 defense. He said top 5 offense. So we know that they value offensive playmaking. And I have to think that now I don't know the new staff very well, but I still have to think with Nick Sirianni's quotes about being multiple and having matchup advantages that they would love a guy like Kyle Pitts. And let me tell you this, Mike. I asked a couple of these scouts that I've spoken to the last few days how they would if I asked them to rank the top 4 pass catchers, meaning I want to know where Pitts his standing among the wide receivers, which you would take. And one guy gave me this ranking. He said Devontae Smith 1, Kyle Pitts 2, Jamar Chase 3, Jalen Waddle 4. So he actually has Pitts higher than Chase and Waddle, which I thought was pretty interesting.
I've seen, NFL.com, who's their guy over there, did the whole thing. He's got Pitts as his 3rd best player in the entire draft.
Oh, Daniel Jeremiah,
correct.
I believe is that. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if you're telling me he's the 3rd best, that's where he's different from O.J. Howard, Hawkins. Hawkinson went 8th last year, by the way, or 2 years ago.
Yeah.
This is where this guy's different. He's not just the best tight end in the class. He might be the 2nd or 3rd best player in the draft.
Here, I did see that. I also saw someone say there's Trevor Lawrence and Kyle Pitts and everybody else. So, I mean, he doesn't drop passes. He runs good routes. He's really a complete weapon. So I think I wouldn't worry about positional as long as you evaluate him as someone who can be on the field for at least 75% of the snaps.
Agree. Good stuff. And that was a good conversation on Kyle Pitts and Brandon Graham and more offseason stuff. Inside the Birds drops tomorrow at 6 a.m. Check out the debut edition, by the way, of Quentin Michael, Jason Avant. It's called Q&A on the Inside the Birds platform.
You got 1 second? Can I tell you one thing?
Yeah.
Jason Avant dropped this amazing bomb on the first Q&A. He talked about how the team and the staff have a report on Jalen Hurts, on his brain. There was a study on his brain. And what Jason Avant said was that Jalen Hurts has a brain that compares, as far as spatial awareness and recognition, to among the top quarterbacks in the league when it comes to processing. And I thought that was fantastic. I know the Eagles are in analytics, but to be able to have a study of a guy's brain and that his brain compares that favorably made me think, wow, maybe there really is something with Jalen Hurts that would be hard for us to see. Now, Jason said, look, you couldn't see it when he was out there because he's a rookie and it's, he doesn't know what he's doing right now. But he did say watching practice, he could tell that Jalen Hurts understood, like when a coverage was going to change right at the snap from, say, maybe a cover 3 to a cover 2 and a blitz to a not blitz, that Hurts was able to process that and pick it up. I thought that was fascinating.
And I don't know where you feel like this. I am 100% against taking a quarterback at 6 or trading up to get one. I am all for giving him the chance, not even giving him this guy has fought everywhere he's been, never handed a job. Here's a time where I think handing this guy the job is okay.
I can understand that sentiment. I'm still, if you grade somebody else as the greatest guy, go for it, but I understand that, certainly.
He is Geoff Mosher. This is Football at 4. Andrew's in tomorrow. Adam's in on Friday. Check out Inside the Birds tomorrow at 6 a.m. The Q&A is up now, so you can listen to that once you're done listening to this show. And you can do that, of course, on the Inside the Birds platform. All right, Moshe, have a good weekend, man.
All right, buddy. Take care.
All right, he, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. Good conversation on Football at 4. And, of course, Football at 4 is brought to you by Dr. Lyle M. Back. Everything from skincare to cosmetic surgery. Go to ilovelyle.back.com. Call 856-MAKEOVER for Dr. Lyle M. Back, proud sponsor of Football at 4.